Hello and welcome to Annie's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Cursed Necklace. In the early morning light, the Isle of Wight lay serene and peaceful. Holly Arnold had just moved into her new cottage, an old house nestled at the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. The house had a storied past, rumored to have belonged to a woman who vanished mysteriously over a century ago. Holly had shrugged off the tales, more excited by the antique charm than daunted by its history. But on her first night, something pulled her to the attic. The staircase creaked ominously as she climbed, her torch casting flickering shadows on the peeling wallpaper. When she reached the attic, a dusty collection of boxes, crates, and forgotten treasures filled the dim room. Among them, a faint glint caught her eye, a small jewelry box partially hidden beneath a pile of old quilts. She brushed the dust from the box and lifted the lid, revealing a necklace with a brilliant red stone set in a delicate silver chain. It was beautiful yet airy, as if the ruby held secrets deep within its sanguine depths. Instinctively, Holly slipped it around her neck, feeling the cool weight settle against her skin. A shiver traced down her spine as she looked in the mirror across the room. Her reflection stared back, the ruby glowing against her pale throat. She could have sworn, just for a second, that another face flickered in the mirror, a woman's face, her eyes dark, her expression twisted with anger. But before she could react, the vision vanished. In the days that followed, Holly began to notice changes in herself. It started subtly, her dreams grew vivid and violent. She'd wake drenched in sweat, images of darkened forests and shattered figures lingering in her mind. Then strange events began happening in the house. At night, she'd hear footsteps pacing the hallway, though no one was there. Her belongings would be moved or disappear altogether, only to reappear in odd places. Her reflection, wherever she caught it, seemed distorted, almost as though someone were standing just behind her. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Holly visited the local library to research the history of her house and, perhaps, the necklace. Leafing through brittle newspaper clippings, she stumbled across the story of a woman named Alina Wren, who had once lived in the cottage. Alina had been a wealthy recluse, and it was said she was in love with a sailor who had promised to return to her. She waited for years, but he never came back. Heartbroken and consumed by jealousy, Alina had died mysteriously one stormy night, her body found clutching the very necklace Holly now wore. Rumor had it that the necklace was cursed by Alina's grief and rage. Local legend claimed that anyone who wore it would suffer until they went mad. Some said Alina's spirit lingered in the house, searching for her lost love, but vengeful toward anyone who dared to wear her necklace. As Holly read on, the lights in the library flickered. She froze, feeling a chill settle over her. She turned and found herself staring at her own reflection in the library's window. The ruby in the necklace gleamed like a drop of blood, and, just behind her, a shadow loomed. Holly felt cold fingers graze her shoulder. Heart pounding, she yanked the necklace from her neck, the clasp snapping as she dropped into her bag. She returned home, shaken and desperate to get rid of the necklace. But when she reached the house, she found her front door ajar. Trembling, she stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay, and she heard the unmistakable sound of someone whispering her name. Holly, the voice was low and raspy. It was coming from the attic. Her legs moved on their own, carrying her up the stairs and into the attic. The room was pitch black, save for a dim red glow from the necklace in her bag. She felt drawn to it, as though it were calling to her. She pulled the necklace out, and as she did, a figure materialized in the darkness. Alina stood before her, her face twisted with sorrow and anger. She reached out, and Holly felt the crushing weight on her chest, as though Alina were pulling the life from her. Struggling to breathe, Holly staggered backward, clutching at her throat as the necklace grew colder and colder. In desperation, Holly tore open the attic window and hurled the necklace out into the night. It disappeared into the darkness, sinking into the stormy sea below. Alina's spirit screamed, a sound so piercing it shattered the mirror and every window in the room. The oppressive weight lifted, and Alina's figure dissolved into mist, her anguished voice fading with the howling wind. Holly sank to the floor, gasping for air, her heart racing. The next morning, Holly watched the sea crash against the cliffs, the events of the night before haunting her. She knew she had broken the curse, but felt an unease that lingered, as though part of Alina's spirit remained, watching and waiting. For weeks, Holly barely slept, and every time she passed the attic, she felt the cold tendrils of Alina's presence reaching out. Though the necklace was gone, Holly knew some curses never fully die. And sometimes, late at night, she could still hear Alina's voice, faint and filled with longing, echoing from the cliffs. After that harrowing night, Holly tried to move on, but the unsettling events in the cottage only intensified. Her phone calls were filled with static and whispered fragments of old sea shanties. Her belongings were still mysteriously moved about, and she continued catching glimpses of Alina in her reflection, her face twisted in pain and jealousy. One night, a powerful storm rolled in, the wind howling through the cracks of the old cottage like a grieving wail. Holly awoke with a start, her heart racing, as she heard a soft tapping against her bedroom window. She opened her eyes to see the silhouette of a woman, gaunt, drenched, and pale, pressing her hands against the glass. It was Alina. Holly wanted to scream, but felt her voice choke in her throat. Alina's hollow eyes met hers, and her lips moved soundlessly, mouthing, "Come back to me." Compelled by a force she couldn't understand, Holly rose and walked to the front door. She tried to resist, but her legs moved as if she were a puppet on strings, Alina's voice guiding her steps. She stumbled through the rain-soaked garden and onto the cliff's edge, the sea roaring below. Alina's voice grew louder, filling her ears with desperate pleas. "You took him from me, Holly." Holly wanted to scream, to protest, but the accusation hung in the air, filling her with dread. Somehow, Alina believed Holly was responsible for her tragic fate, an old wound reopened by Holly's discovery of the cursed necklace. As the storm raged, Holly found herself stepping dangerously close to the edge of the cliff. The wind whipped around her, her hair and clothes drenched, the icy sea spray stinging her face. And then, from somewhere deep below, she saw a glint of red flashing between the waves. The necklace had returned. Holly felt an inexplicable pull, as if the ruby were calling her, beckoning her to take it back. She fell to her knees, staring into the dark, churning waters below. Alina's presence grew stronger, her ghostly whispers merging with the crash of the waves. Holly's vision began to blur, and she heard a chorus of voices, Alina's, but also others, women who had worn the necklace before, each driven to their doom by the curse. With a surge of strength, Holly turned and stumbled back from the edge, but Alina's spirit appeared again, blocking her path. She hovered in front of Holly, her form flickering in and out of the mist, her eyes glowing with anger. "You cannot escape me, Holly. You are bound to me now," Holly cried, finding her voice at last. "I didn't take him from you. Let me go." Alina's face twisted, her expression softening briefly. The two women stared at each other, and for the first time Holly sensed the depth of Alina's sorrow, her entire life lost to the madness of waiting, her mind twisted by betrayal and heartbreak. Summoning the courage to face Alina, Holly whispered, "He's gone, Alina. You must let him go." Alina's ghost wavered, her form beginning to dissolve in the rain, her face now etched with an unbearable sadness. Her hand reached out, almost gently, as if yearning for some final comfort. The storm began to ease, the violent wind softening to a mournful breeze, and the mist around Alina grew faint. Holly watched as the spirit's tortured expression faded, replaced by a sorrowful acceptance. Slowly, Alina lowered her hand and took a step back, her form dissipating like smoke carried away by the wind. Holly stood alone at the edge of the cliff, watching as the last remnants of Alina's spirit faded into the sea. The storm had lifted, the sky beginning to clear, and with it came a strange stillness. For the first time since she'd found the necklace, Holly felt a sense of calm settle over her, a warmth returning to the air. The following day, Holly packed her belongings and left the cottage. As she looked back one last time, she could have sworn she saw a figure on the cliffs, a woman's figure, peaceful, her gaze turned to the horizon. Alina had found her peace at last, but the ruby necklace, lost in the depths of the sea, would wait patiently, ready to tempt the next soul who dared to disturb its haunted rest. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.